Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story: Regional Manager tries to dampen my shine. I dampened her earning potential. The second story: I made my own uniform and peeved off the General Manager. The third story: Dispatcher didn't help me to change the tire and was fired. The first story is, so my hair isn't acceptable? What would you suggest? This takes place in the early 2000s. I was working in a video/DVD rental store at the time, and I was only a couple of weeks into the job, but was enjoying my time there. At the store was me, 2 managers, other guy working the register, and the regional manager for the area. I've always liked having a splash of color in my hair, and it had never been an issue with employment until this instant. At the time, I had my natural brunette hair, short and spiked up, with a blue patch at the front, which happened to be the same shade as our employee shirts, which pleased me. One day a few weeks into the job, the regional manager walked in, a woman with a chip on her shoulder the size of her ego. She did her checks on how the store was running, etc., and was talking to me as I was the newest employee there, making sure I knew what I was doing and stuff. As she finishes up, she says offhand to me, "By the way, you'll have to take that color out of your hair. I want it gone before my next visit." This surprised me, as I read the employee handbook to make sure I was following all uniform guidelines and made sure it wasn't an issue with the 2 shop managers, so I asked her why I had to change my hair. She instantly got huffy and puffed out her chest and said, "Because I told you to. Are you questioning me?" Me: "No, I was just wondering what guidelines I've broken, as I've read the employee and uniform regulations and didn't see anything about hair color in there, and want to be sure I haven't missed something." Regional Manager: "Because I told you so, and it's an unnatural hair color, so you'll have to get rid of it." That annoyed me, as I've never liked having to do something just because. So I told her, "Well, other guy at the register has bleached tips, Manager 1 dyes her hair blonde, and Manager 2 has maroon hair. None of those are their natural colors, so I don't understand why I'm getting singled out." Regional Manager did not like this, and since she couldn't give me an answer, just repeated, "Because I'm your boss and I told you so, and if you don't want to change your hair, you can leave. I'll be in next week and I want that color gone." So I said, "I understand, I'll fix it, no worries. But just to be clear so I'm in keeping with your guidelines, other guy, Manager 1, and Manager 2 have acceptable color and styles?" To which she said yes, and I asked, "And is my hairstyle okay? Did you want me to cut it a certain way or anything? Or is it just the color?" She started getting annoyed and said, "You can keep it like that, just get rid of the color." So I confirmed that I would have it sorted before she came in next week, which seemed to satisfy the beast, and she walked off in a cloud of smugness at having laid down her law. As soon as she was out of the door, I told the shop managers what I was going to do, and they laughed but said they'd have my back when she came in again. So my blue patch of hair had to go, no problem. Colored tips, dyed blonde hair, and maroon hair like the other staff had were all hunky-dory. So that weekend I did all 3 to be on the safe side. I bleached all my hair near transparent blonde, with maroon tips spiked up in my usual style, as apparently that wasn't an issue. Well, turns out that's not what the regional manager had in mind. Quell surprise. She came in the next week and lost it, took me in the back with the 2 shop managers, shouting about how I was blatantly ignoring her, and that she was going to see to it that I was fired. I acted innocent and surprised, and said that I had checked with her that this would be okay before she left. My hairstyle was fine, colored tips on the other guy was fine, and she had confirmed that the maroon hair the shop manager had was fine. She was not backing down, and assured me she'd report me to the head office for my disrespecting a regional manager like that. She stormed out of the shop on her merry way, so again I told the 2 shop managers what I was going to do, which was get in touch with the head office's HR department myself, as I was following all written company regulations, as well as the regional manager's arbitrary rules, and she seemed to be discriminating against me personally for whatever reason, and I would be pursuing unfair dismissal, as there was no reason to fire me. I was good at my job, and got on well with all the customers and staff. It was only the regional manager out to get me. So I did just that, emailed the head office's HR, saying what had happened, and the 2 shop managers also emailed on my behalf, backing up that I was following all guidelines, including the ones the regional manager made up, and that I was a model employee, for them anyways, but I liked them, and they would attest that I was being singled out and harassed by the regional manager if I got dismissed because of this. The next day, the shop managers called me in to say HR had been in touch, and that of course I wasn't going to be fired, and there's no company guidelines for things like hair color, and not to worry at all about it. Have my hair any way I wanted once it wasn't unkept. Awesome, that's all I wanted. Happy ending. Now let's do the super duper happy ending. Diddle-doo, diddle-doo, diddle-doo. Couple weeks later, the new regional manager walked in to introduce themselves. Turns out I wasn't the only one having issues with the regional manager being on a power trip. After they had had several complaints from staff and managers in different stores throughout the area, she was demoted to a regular store manager. I was the straw that broke their back, it seems. The second story is, forced me to obtain my work uniform with no notice after slashing my hours? Really? My final retail job was at a preppy designer clothing store. When I started working there, we were encouraged to wear the brand to work, although you could also wear plain khakis and a plain polo shirt. Then after a while, the general manager left. The new GM, a vicious, racist, labor law ignoring psychopath, announces that we all have to switch to uniforms. Khakis or denim only, and a navy blue polo shirt or button down only. Which would be fine, but the company won't provide them, and the GM from hell waited until 3 days before the deadline to tell us. And at the time, the store was very picked over from a big sale, so there was almost no acceptable stock, and all the most common sizes in those styles were gone. About 60 employees, mostly part-timers, were frantically scrambling to find acceptable clothes, with almost no notice. At our own expense, and nearly all of us had to look elsewhere. This was a particularly nightmarish prospect for me. I'd had my hours slashed repeatedly, in retaliation for reporting a work injury. The DM was later demoted over it, and another manager was fired, but that's another story. I had no money. After rent and food, I had nothing left at the end of the month, and for the first time ever in my life, had to carry a balance on my credit card just to eat, and I can live on almost nothing. To make matters worse, my body is a nightmare to fit. Polos hang on me like tents, and button-ups always gap. Even if I could afford to buy clothes I was now expected to wear, they weren't going to fit me to brand standards, and I would not have time to take them apart and reconstruct them. I went to the managers and explained that I couldn't afford any more clothes. They'd cut my hours. The GM had deliberately interfered with my job search, like I was gonna stay put with her around. My credit card was maxed out, and I had no money left. Could I please get some help? Oh, it can be any brand, just no logo. Maybe you didn't hear me. I can't even afford to go to the Goodwill. True. They blew me off again. So you won't help me? Suit yourselves. I called my mom and asked if she still had any of the navy blue cotton fabric left over from a long ago sewing project. I was a fashion design major in art school. I know how to make a shirt that fits me. The shirt met the required criteria of having a collar and buttons, but I deliberately did not do a great job, and I know how to do a great job. I didn't have time to make a collar mock-up and adjust the pattern for the best drape. Oh well, the collar's just gonna sit funny. I only had enough interfacing for the placket and the undercollar. Oh well, the collar already sits kinda funny anyway. I didn't have time to turn the collar points out exactly right. Oh well, they just won't quite match, and one of them is just going to stick out a bit. I didn't have time to sew functional buttonholes. Oh well, the shirt closes with hidden zippers anyway, so it wouldn't gap. I didn't have time or money to go to the fabric store for matching buttons, and use several similar ones. Oh well, you'd have to have a very sharp eye to notice. The fabric rolled and creased a bit along the hemline in 3 or 4 places. Oh well, I didn't have time to press it, let alone hand stitch it. The first day the uniform was in effect, evil GM got one look at the shirt, and her nasty smug smirk evaporated. She was fuming, but she couldn't do or say anything about it. After all, it fit the required criteria, and it was the best anyone could reasonably be expected to do with no notice, no money, and no help whatsoever. Sewing is a lot of work, you know. The last story is truck driving. I used to drive for the 5th largest trucking company in America at the time. They had all sorts of problems. Trucks that always broke down, directions that were never right. This is before commercial routes could be programmed on GPSs. I once had to ask a driver from another company for directions to one of my own company's yards. Now they've got a new CEO now, and I hope things have been fixed. I always meant to send them a letter, but I never did. I arrived to pick up a trailer, hooked up, did my mandatory inspection, and found that the trailer had a flat tire. The tire was just hanging off the rim, but otherwise appeared to have no damage. I got on my Qualcomm, a satellite communication system, and I sent in one of the message templates to dispatch. Message 157, 5:01 p.m. Friday, repairs required, flat tire. At 5:01 p.m., I had the weekend dispatcher. I sat around for quite some time waiting for a reply. When no reply came, I repeated the message. When I still got no reply, I messaged dispatch directly, asking if my messages got through and when repairs were coming. Finally, I got a reply. 159 dispatch, we need to know the tire size. While I'm a professional driver, licensed to drive in over 150 countries, I'm embarrassed to say I never had the need to buy a tire before and didn't know which of the many things written on the tire contained the information they needed. So in message 160 to dispatch, I relayed every single thing written on the tire to them. 161 dispatch. The fleet uses a universal tire size. 162 truck to dispatch. Then why did you ask me? Several hours passed and there were no further messages, and no one came to conduct repairs. Finally, I called them on the phone. They said someone would be there shortly. After several more hours came and went, I called again and they said to stop calling because I was tying up the line and bothering them. Oh, that peeved me off. So I disconnected my Kenworthless 500 from the trailer, parked out of the way, and started reading a book I had. Friday night passed, Saturday passed, Sunday passed. Monday morning at 9:01 a.m., when the regular 9 to 5 weekday dispatcher came back on duty, my cell phone began ringing off the hook. Why haven't you rolled? You've been idle for over 60 hours. Oh, I was ready for this. Well, sir, if you look at message 157, you'll see that I called in for a repair. I heard the beeping of the computer as he pulled up the message menu and saw the repair request. You were supposed to send in the tire size. Well, sir, if you look at messages 160 and 161, you'll see I did send in the tire size, and after I did that, I was told the entire fleet only uses one type of tire. But, well, why didn't you ask them what the holdup was? Well, sir, if you look at messages 163 and 164, you'll see I did ask them what the holdup was. The guy was stammering and stuttering at this point. Well, why didn't you use the phone and call dispatch directly? Well, sir, if you check the call logs, you'll see that I did call dispatch twice. You did? Yes. And what did they say? In my sweetest smart A voice, I said, they told me not to call them anymore because I was bothering them. Do you mean to tell me you've sat idle for 60 hours because of a stinking tire? Apologetically, I said. Dispatch told me to wait, sir. He was out of breath. Don't move. Someone will be there in 20 minutes. 19 minutes later, a guy showed up laughing his A off when he pulled up, because apparently the dispatcher had vented to him the entire trip there. The repair guy had a tire and a number of pieces of equipment with him in his pickup truck. He looked at the tire, informed me that the tire had no damage, but had merely lost pressure to the point where it had come loose from the rim. All that needed to be done was for it to be put back on the rim and repressurized. Since the tire was hanging there, a huge gap between the tire and the rim, I asked him how one could possibly reinflate it. He took out an old propane tank that had a large pipe welded to it, with what looked like the triangular end of a vacuum cleaner on it. He shoved the triangular piece into the gap between the rim and the tire, and opened this large handle valve that was on the pipe. The entire contents of the tank shot into that gap all at once. The pressure popped the tire back in place onto the rim. He then used an air compressor to finish reinflating the tire to full pressure, had me sign something, then went on his way. I used a message template to tell dispatch I was hooked up to the trailer and beginning departure. I also direct messaged dispatch saying something like thank you for getting the repairs arranged. I got a direct message back that simply said, uh-huh. That weekend dispatcher was immediately fired. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.